Oh my God. Teenagers. You know, the conflicts are going to be coming more and more. Now, they can be the extreme conflicts like I talked about with Darfur. They could look like the Jordan River in the Middle East, the Tigris and the Euphrates. Or they'll start to just become a little more friction in a community, like here in Maine. I mean, you know, it's hard to talk to people about water shortage in Maine after the summer. It's like, you know, we're all rusting. But that's the whole point, is that it's not evenly distributed. So what does it mean for you all to be concerned about it? Well, let's just talk about your own rational self-interest. Let's not talk even about the public good, or even the ethical reasons why you should do it, or the global reasons. Let's just talk about you and your pocketbook. All right. Years ago, Steve Call and Roy Bouchard, many of you know Roy's at DEP, and Steve used to be at the Mitchell Center, they did a study, and they showed that water quality has a direct impact on the market value of lakefront property. They did a study, and they used water clarity as a measure of water quality. You know, water clarity, it's, you know, you take a Secudis, if you're familiar with that, you look down, and, you know, it's how much stuff is in the lake. And when we talk about stuff, really we're talking really about phytoplankton and, you know, how much organic matter is in there. And that lakes, if they get too much phosphorus in them, you know, that's like miracle grow for plants. And that's when a lake can get eutrophic, and you'll get an algae bloom, and that's not good, because if you've been in a lake that's ever had an algae bloom, first it looks gross, and then as the algae dies, it stinks. And then as the algae sinks, it uses the dissolved oxygen in the water to decompose, and so it sucks all the oxygen out of the water, and you get fish kills because there's no oxygen. Right? So, but they showed, and this was probably about, 15, 20 years ago, that a 1 meter diminishment in water clarity can affect your property anywhere from $11 to $200 per foot frontage. So just, if you're a lakefront property owner, you know how much frontage you've got, just do your own mental calculation. Take a medium number, take $100, and take whatever your property value, you know, how much shorefront you've got, times $100 per foot, and burn it. Throw it out the window. You've just lost it. And those of us who have tried to sell houses in the last 4 years in this housing market, you know, the last thing you need is another thing to depress your property values. So water quality has a direct impact on your property. Invasive species, and we'll talk about that in a second. But invasive species are also another impact. They showed a guy by the name of Tommy Sue, when he was doing his master's work with Dr. Kevin Boyle, who did the economic impact study on the Great Ponds, did a study over Vermont and showed that the average property owner in the Burlington, Vermont marketplace, if they had Eurasian water milfoil in their lake, on average, the property values were depressed $12,500 per unit. Now, think about that now in the aggregate. If you think about just your water quality or invasive species, and think about what that does to a municipal tax base. Because we all know the lakes is the goose that lays the golden eggs. Okay, you know, 2/3. Well, what do they say in general? That if you've got a lake in your community, that those people pay about 2/3 of the property tax for the total municipal budget, and the non-waterfront property owners about 1/3. So the people on the lake are bearing the tax burden. So what happens if your water quality goes down? Your lake is not as attractive on the marketplace as, say, a lake that's got really nice water quality, good fisheries. You know, you want to swim, you want to be there. What happens is that, you know, as the property values become depressed, municipalities then have to make some choices. You can either cut municipal services, and of course, what's the biggest item in a municipality's budget? That's your schools. And if it's going to be schools, usually what gets cut are sports and arts. Or what you end up doing is raising the mill rate. And so here's the argument for those people that are not on the lake who say, you know, all those people from away, I don't care, you know, fine. Let them pay all that money. Well, if the municipal tax rate goes up, what ends up happening is it becomes a tax shift from the waterfront property owners to the non-waterfront property owners. So anybody that lives in a community that has a lake has an absolute financial stake in keeping that lake clean. It is the essence of your community. It is the economic base for the community. So it doesn't make any sense whatsoever for any community to start fighting over whether or not they should be taking care of a lake. It's in your own rational self-interest and in the global picture. It's our duty. It's our duty. You know, we don't inherit the lake. We're borrowing from our kids. And the question is, what sort of heritage are you going to leave your children and grandchildren on Highland Lake? Now you all are here, you're concerned, and you want to do something about it. Now the question is, now you got to get other people involved in it. Well, you know, it's always great when there's a crisis, you know, but the very nature of the crisis is the horse is already out of the barn, okay? So you don't want to have snakehead fish in your lake. You guys know about the snakeheads? Oh, this is a great story. So I was on the federal invasive species. So a guy down in Washington, Maryland, and this is a cultural issue, but this is the story. I'm just going to give you the facts. The snakeheads are thought to have medicinal properties to them. So he got, his sister was sick from China, and so he wanted to have this cute little snakehead fish, and they're really pretty cute when they're little. And he got some that he was going to use for helping his sister get well. Well, she got better anyway. Well, the snakehead goes from being the cute little snakehead to basically a golf bag with teeth. And they are just carnivores. And so he's like, well, what am I going to do with this? It's like, you know, the urban legends of people like having little baby alligators you used to buy at the circus and, oh, too big, let's flush it down the toilet. Well, they're living now in the sewers. Well, so he takes this snakehead, does what a lot of people do, tosses it into a lake behind his house. So snakeheads do what they do, and really the teeth, they look like snakes, that's why they call them snakes. And if you ever need to know what a little girl sounds like screaming, put a snake in my face, and I will promise you I can give it to you. 5 minutes ago. So anyway, the snakehead just got through it. It's got huge. Now here's what snakeheads do that is kind of cool. They can walk. They can live out of water for up to 3 days. They'll come out, their pectoral fins harden up, and then they start walking. And they walk over to the next water body. And that's how they spread. And if that doesn't scare the hell out of you, I don't know what does. But so they had that big issue, and it was all in the waterways down there. And the problem is, like with any invasive species, there's no natural predators, there's no viruses, bacteria that take care of them. They just explode and they take over. And it crowds out the native ecosystems, and that's the problem. So you don't want to have Eurasian water milfoil in your lakes. You're going to be getting into using aquatic herbicides very quickly. And I'll tell you, I was against the usage of aquatic herbicides when I first got into this thing. Having, however, seen what happens if you don't nuke it right off the bat, I've become radical about it. And people are like, okay, well, we'll put in just a little bit because we don't really want to, do too much. Well, all you're doing is giving it inoculation. And it comes back like the Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's even stronger.